Dear learners, I welcome you all to uh, this course on understanding human rights. Uh, in our previous lecture, we were discussing about India's international obligations of human rights. Then we discussed the constitutional framework of human rights. And in the constitutional framework of human rights, we discussed first of all the preamble and then the fundamental rights that are there in the Constitution of India. We found that most of the civil and political rights, that the first generation rights, they have been included in the fundamental rights chapter. It is also ensuring the rights of linguistic and religious minorities in the country. The group rights have been also ensured through this. You found that it also abolished untouchability, which was a practice in the country for many centuries. So it is not only the abolition of untouchability, but we also found that it has been, the practice of untouchability has been criminalized. Uh, so our own segment of our own population, which was suffering from uh, discrimination, humiliation, subjugation, and what not. The worst was, of course, the practice of untouchability. So in this way, we find that Indian Constitution is a progressive document which has tried to, make India a modern welfare state and trying to promote. It has tried to promote the interest of all communities and groups. Uh, After that, we are coming to the directive principle of a state policy. Uh, you will find in the directive principle of a state policy, there are many rights that have been included. Most of these rights, they are of socio-economic nature. And you all know, while discussing the ICSCR and ICCPR and the main difference in the implementation mechanism of both the covenants, we found that the ICCPR can be implemented without, there is nothing like you need a lot of resources for that. But for the implementation of the ICSCR, socio-economic rights, what is needed? A lot of resources are also needed, not only political will. That is enough. So this is the reason that you will find the very strong implementation mechanism is there in the ICCPR, but that was not there in the ICSCR. Similar is the case in our country. For example, in the Constitution of India, you will find all the fundamental rights, they are legally justiciable. So, for the violation of fundamental rights, if there is any violation, encroachment upon the fundamental rights of the citizens, then the people can go to the court, and the judiciary, in the Supreme Court of India, can issue writs for the protection of these rights. So, these rights, you see that Supreme Court of India is also the custodian of the rights and liberties of the people. And that's why these legally justiciable rights are fundamental rights. Then you will find that the economic social rights, they are basically mentioned under directive principle of a state policy. The main difference is that, directive principle of a state policy, or the rights that are mentioned under DPSP, they are not legally justiciable. However, they carry a lot of weight because, these are the guidelines given to the state for, these are the goals that are to be achieved. And, this DPSP is important in the sense that if India claims to be a welfare state, then it is the DPSP and, the realization of the rights that are given under directive principle of state policy, you know, on the basis of that, India can successfully claim to be a welfare state. So you will find that the political democracy, the aspect of political democracy is emphasized in the fundamental rights. But so far as the socio-economic democracy is concerned, it can be realized with the realization of the rights that are there in the DPSP. So now we are going to discuss first of all DPSP, that is Directive Principle of State Policy. Then we will also discuss fundamental duties that were inserted in the Constitution of India through amendment. And then not only this, but we are also going to discuss the institutional mechanism to promote and protect human rights in India. So it is not only constitution and legal provisions, but the institutional mechanism also we are going to discuss. So here we go. First of all, we are going to discuss directive principle of state policy. The directive principles constitute vital elements of the constitution and are deemed to be fundamental in the governance of the country. This is the significance. They are considered as fundamental in the governance of the country. Derived from the Irish constitution, the framers of our constitution incorporated these principles, that is part 4th, spanning from in part 4, that is spanning from Article 36 to Article 51. So, these articles are relevant from the point of view of directive principles of state policy. After studying various constitutions, the Constituent Assembly members recognize the state's primary role in fostering the social well-being of citizens and the economic prosperity of the nation. This perspective influenced the inclusion of these rights in our constitution. So, you see, the concept of welfare state, that is there, that is going to be realized through these rights that were mentioned in the DPSP. Despite their importance, directive principles are non-enforceable by the courts, meaning that the judiciary cannot mandate the government to adhere to these principles. So it means we have already discussed the main difference between fundamental rights and the directive principle of a state policy is that directive principle of a state policy is not legally justiciable, whereas these fundamental rights are legally enforceable, justiciable, justifiable. So that is the main difference. Instead, they serve as guidelines for establishing a social order characterized by social, economic, and political justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity as articulated in the Constitution's preamble. So, you see the connection between the preamble, the goals, and the objectives as specified in the preambles are being fulfilled by including these articles in the DPSP. It is the responsibility of every accountable government to translate these principles into actionable measures that promote social and economic justice among citizens. So, it is imposing responsibility upon the government to, take special measures to make India a welfare state by realizing the goals that have been identified under DPSP. Now we are going to discuss the provisions. So Article 36 definition in this part, unless the context otherwise requires, the state has the same meaning as in part 3rd. So Article 37 application of the principle contained in this part, that is again dealing with that aspect. Article 38 is and from here we are starting the main provisions. Article 38 says that a state to secure a social order for the promotion of welfare of the people. The concept of welfare state we have been discussing. So, the state shall strive to promote the welfare of the people by securing and protecting as effectively as it may a social order in which justice, social, economic, and political shall inform all the institutions of the national life. You see, the justice, social, political, and economic was proclaimed in the preamble, and you see that is being reflected here also. So, what is the responsibility of the state? What is the duty of the state? It has to promote the welfare of the people by securing what? The securing a social order in which justice, social, economic, and political shall inform all the institutions of the national life. The state shall in particular strive to minimize the inequalities in income and endeavor to eliminate inequalities in status, facilities, and opportunities, not only amongst individuals but also amongst groups of people residing in different areas or engaged in different vocations. You see, this is again important. Not only individual but the groups are also to be taken into account. That's so what is being emphasized, and you see why this provision is important, because in India you will find we have observed gross economic and social inequalities. So there are certain groups who are on the on the uppermost ladder of the society. On the other hand, you will find there are people who are reading under abject poverty and even to the level of starvation. So that is why this article becomes important. What that the state shall in particular strive to minimize the inequalities in income and endeavor to eliminate inequalities in status. Then only social and economic democracy can be achieved. Facilities and opportunities not only amongst individuals but also amongst groups of people. So all the reservation programs, affirmative action programs that you are seeing, poverty elevation program, that is there in consonance with the article that we read just now. Article 39. Certain principles of policy to be followed by the state. The state shall in particular direct its policy towards securing what now you see. What should be the policy of the state and what should be the aim and object of those policies? That the citizens, men and women equally have the right to an adequate means of livelihood. You can realize that this kind of articles cannot be incorporated in the fundamental rights. Why? Because it cannot be ensured. If they are being made legally justiciable, it will be very difficult to implement in one go. But ultimately a state has to progressively, a state has to gradually realize this dream or the right that has been mentioned, so that the citizens, men and women, equally have the right to an adequate means of livelihood. So, it becomes the responsibility of the state that the ownership and control of the material resources of the community are so distributed as best to subserve the common good. You see, it is often asked what is politics and what is the role of the state. Uh, People had different kind of understanding of politics. Somebody can say that the layman's understanding is that politics is a dirty game, and that is why students are advised by the teachers to stay away from politics. Employees are advised by the employer to stay away from politics. Even parents advise their children not to be indulged in politics and concentrate on their work and all. But you'll find what is being emphasized here. First of all, you have to understand what is politics. The politics is an activity which is responsible for authoritatively allocating values in the society. So it is there to distribute resources, wealth, honor, and offices of the state. So therefore, politics becomes a vital activity for all the individuals living in a country like India, because politics can be used for the upward mobility of the backward classes, marginalized section of society. So therefore, that is being highlighted, that the ownership and control of the material resources of the community are so distributed as best to subserve the common good. So, concentration of wealth should not be there. Rather, the state resources should be used for the common good of all. That the operation of the economic system does not result in the concentration of wealth and means of production to the common detriment. Again, it should not be, the means of production should not be in the hands of few people, because that will create a problem. And this is the reason that a lot of debate in the country these days on privatization of economy, especially in the post globalization phase, that a few people are showing the signs of prosperity, their business, yeah, corporate houses, if they are developing or flourishing by leaps and bounds, it doesn't mean that we are fighting against mass poverty, or you can say that the people are also having prosperity. That debate is going on already in the country, which is the sign of a vibrant democracy. This kind of debate must go on, and this kind of deliberation, discussion, debates will of course be useful for the largest democracy of the world, which is ours. So what is there, that the operation of the economic system does not result in the concentration of wealth and means of production to the common detriment. So you see, the noble ideals and the objectives have been enlisted here. That there is equal pay for equal work for both men and women. That has been our issue. You will find that this has been emphasized right from the very beginning, that equal pay for equal work, and there should not be any kind of discrimination on the basis of gender so far as the payment of wages are concerned. So that is why it has been emphasized again, noble ideal, that the health and strength of workers, men and women, and the tender age of children are not abused, and that citizens are not forced by economic necessity to enter into a vocations unsuited to their age or strength. And you see, the subsequent legislations are also there. So, for example, the Child Labor Abolition Act that you will find. Um, so the children below the age of 14 years cannot be employed in hazardous industries. So that is there. So abolition of child labor has also become the goal of the Indian state. Uh, Unfortunately, the one fourth of the child labor force, the total child labor force of the world is in India. Uh, but again, you see, but these, so that is why the framers of the constitution, they were conscious of this fact, and that is why this kind of goal and has been set under directive principle of state policy, and it is the responsibility of the state to ensure that the health of children, men and women, or the workers is not destroyed by employing them in the industry or the hazardous industry. So that the health of the workers, men and women, children, that is of utmost importance. That the children are given opportunities and facilities to develop in a healthy manner and in conditions of freedom and dignity, and that childhood and youth are protected against exploitation and against moral and material abandonment. Again, you see that this kind of goal is being set, and the state has to ensure that this does not happen. So, what is important that the children are given opportunities and facilities to develop in a healthy manner and in conditions of freedom and dignity, and that childhood and youth are protected against exploitation and against moral and material abandonment. So, because that will destroy everything. Those children and youth, they are to be given consideration, and they are to be saved from exploitation and from moral and material abandonment. Article 39A, equal justice and free legal aid. Again, you see, we were discussing that the cost of justice is very high in most of the societies, and that's why the poor people, they face this kind of problem. We must salute the framers of the Indian Constitution. What is there that you see 39A, the state shall secure that the operation of the legal system promote justice on a basis of equal opportunity and shall in particular provide free legal aid. Important. If the people cannot afford the cost of justice, then the free legal aid will be provided by the state by suitable legislation or schemes or in any other way to ensure that opportunities for securing justice are not denied to any citizen by reason of economic or other disabilities. So that's why the provision of subsequent enactment has been there, and that is why the free legal aid is available for the people, those who are destitute and poor, or those who cannot afford the cost of justice. Of course, you can debate and discuss about the quality of the free legal aid that is provided by the state, but even then, this provision is there, so at least for which you see this article becomes important. Article 40, organization of village panchayats. You see the Gandhian dream. The state shall take steps to organize village panchayats and endow them with such powers and authority as may be necessary to enable them to function as units of self government. This was Gandhian dream, which has been incorporated here. Gandhi was against urbanization. He never encouraged, the mechanization, industrialization, and urbanization. And at that time, Mahatma Gandhi pointed out what are the ill effects that are going to be there if we are going for unbridled urbanization and industrialization. So that's why Article 40 is the realization of the dream of Mahatma Gandhi. To mentioning village panchayats means the basic unit of democracy should be the village panchayat. Article 41, right to work, to education, and to public assistance in certain cases. So the state shall, within the limits of its economic capacity and development, of course, it is qualified that a state shall, within the limits of its economic capacity and development, make effective provision for securing the right to work, to education, and to public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement, and in other cases of undeserved want. So, that is also the responsibility of the state. What is there? That make effective provision for securing the right to work, that is one, to education, and to public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement, and in other cases of undeserved want. Article 42, Provisions for just and humane conditions of work and maternity relief. The state shall make provisions for securing just and humane conditions of work and for maternity relief. So you have, under labor laws, many kinds of acts we have, and maternity benefit, child care benefit, all these have been, uh, you know, incorporated in the subsequent legislation. So you'll find that it doesn't mean that the directive that have been issued to the state, they have not been realized. You'll find subsequent legislation has been there, and that's why these rights have been ensured. Article 43, living wage, etc. for workers. The state shall endeavor to secure by suitable legislation or economic organization or in any other way to all workers, agricultural, industrial, or otherwise, work, a living wage, conditions of work ensuring a decent standard of living, and full enjoyment of leisure and social and cultural opportunities. And in particular, the state shall endeavor to promote cottage industries. Again, Gandhian dream, you see. Promote cottage industries on an individual or cooperative basis in rural areas. You know, promotion of cottage industries will also lead to a production system which is in harmony with nature, or at least it is not going to create that much of environmental destruction. So that is why Gandhian dream of every production must be in complete harmony with nature, that can be also realized with this. So you'll find Gandhism or the Gandhian thoughts are being reflected in these articles. Article 43A, participation of workers in management of industries. This has been a problem where, we were discussing that how socialism uh, became a very popular movement all over the world, because you see the employers, especially the capitalist class or the factory owners, they were exploiting the dependencies of the workers and exploiting their dependencies by determining the wages uh, of these workers in a way that was detrimental to their interest. So very low wages were being paid to them. Marxian surplus value, you all remember. So that's why what is being highlighted here, that who will determine the wages, what should be the conditions of work, what should be the rights of the workers. So all they are important for ensuring social and economic democracy. So, again, this article is important. Participation of workers in management of industries. The state shall take steps by suitable legislation or in another way to secure the participation of workers in the management of undertakings, establishments, or other organizations engaged in any industry. So, again, you see, giving workers the right to participate in the management, and that is why, by that way, they are becoming stakeholders. 43B, promotion of cooperative societies. Again, you see the cooperatives, they are important. Article 44, uniform civil code for the citizens. The state shall endeavor to secure for the citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. So you see the word the state shall endeavor. It means, what is this endeavor? A state will try to develop consensus so that when we are trying to achieve the goal of a uniform civil code, at least the different segment, different stakeholders in the country, they don't feel that something bad has happened to them. So that's why the government of India has not been able to achieve the goal of introducing the uniform civil code because of the diversity that we see in the country. So that is why you will find personal laws are also in operation. So law of succession, property, marriage, divorce, they are still being governed by the personal laws. Few states have come up with the idea of introducing uniform civil code, but at the national level, we will find there is nothing like a uniform civil code. And that's why the debate is going on, and you will find the matter has been politicized to a great extent. We will find Supreme Court of India has been also from time to time reminding the government of India that the uniform civil code should be introduced in the country. Article 45, provisions for early childhood care and education to children below the age of 6 years. So, the 86th Amendment Act of 2002 changed the subject matter of Article 45 and made elementary education a fundamental right under Article 21A. And now, what is the provision? Now, the state shall endeavor to provide within a period of 10 years from the commencement of this constitution for free and compulsory education for all children until they complete the age of 14 years. So, not 6 years, but now it has become a fundamental right. Article 46, promotion of educational and economic interest of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other weaker sections. As you know that scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, or other weaker sections of the society, when we mention, there are certain communities or segments in our country, those who have been historically disadvantaged. They have faced discrimination, humiliation, and many kind of challenges for centuries, and that's why they lag behind. So the if the social democracy and political social and economic democracy is to be achieved in the country, so taking care of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other weaker sections of society means socially excluded groups, marginalized communities, that is the responsibility of the state. So the state shall promote with a special care. You see, the state shall promote with a special care the educational and economic interest of the weaker sections of the people, and in particular of the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes, and shall protect them from social injustice and all forms of exploitation. Again, this article becomes very important for achieving the goal of social and economic democracy. Uh, it is also the recognition of the fact that there are certain communities in the country who are historically disadvantaged, who were marginalized, who were socially excluded, and that is why a special care must be there for these communities, for these segments. So, this cannot be called a kind of appeasement or a special favor, because they they lag behind because of the exploitation of centuries. So that is why some kind of affirmative action, special policies and programs for them is must, which have been highlighted in this article. Article 47, duty of the state to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living and to improve public health. You see, public health is also being mentioned here. The state shall regard the raising of the level of nutrition. Malnutrition, undernutrition has been a problem in the country. If you see the statistics that is shared by many NGOs and even by the government, that many children, a large number of children in our country are malnourished. And if they are malnourished right from the very beginning, so they are going to face many problems. So therefore, it is the duty of the state to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living and to improve public health. The state shall regard the raising of the level of nutrition and the standard of living of its people and the improvement of public health as among its primary duties, and in particular, the state shall endeavor to bring about prohibition of the consumption, except for medical purposes, of intoxicating drinks and of drugs which are injurious to health. So you see that this kind of policies are to be also made by the state, and that is why the state has enacted many laws to deal with this kind of issues. Article 48, Organization of Agriculture and Animal Husbandry. So, India has traditionally been a agricultural country. So, what is there? The state shall endeavor to organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines, and shall in particular take steps for preserving and improving the breeds and prohibiting the slaughter of cows and calves and other milch and draught cattle. This has been, you see that the cows and the calves have been especially mentioned, and other milch and draught cattle has been also mentioned here. So that is also the responsibility of the state. So you'll find banning cow slaughter. There are many laws in the country. You can understand the utility of cows and calves and other milch and draught animal in the country. According to many studies that if you see, that the shortage of milk is already there in the country. And if you see the number of the milk animal in the country, draught animal in the country, then you'll find it is sufficient for 40 to 50% of the population of the country so far as the availability of milk is concerned. So therefore, that is why it is the responsibility of the state to promote this, and therefore it has been mentioned in the Article 48. Article 48A, protection and improvement of environment and safeguarding of forest and wildlife. We were discussing environmental rights. That was also one of the topics that we discussed, and you see it has been mentioned here in Article 48A that protection and improvement of environment. So, right to clean environment is being ensured through this, and safeguarding of forest and wildlife. So, you'll find there is already legislation. The state shall endeavor to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country. So, forest conservation programs, wildlife conservation programs, they are already there. Many legislation is also there related with the environment, etc. in the country. Article 49, protection of monuments and places and objects of national importance. Again, this right has been also ensured here. Article 50, separation of judiciary from executive. This is needed for ensuring the impartiality of the court, and that has been ensured through this article. So the state shall take a step to separate the judiciary from the executive in the public services of the state. So Article 51, this independent and impartial judiciary is most essential for the for the realization of the human rights of the people. So that's why it has been ensured through this. Article 51, promotion of international peace and security, that we already discussed. So what are the India's international obligation of human rights? They all international obligations of human rights or the treaties that India has signed, it is also the constitutional obligation of India under Article 51 to fulfill the treaties obligations. So therefore, this article also becomes important. With this, we are going to wind up this lecture today. In the next lecture, when we are meeting, we are going to discuss fundamental duties, because we have been discussing that the rights and duties go together. So we discuss first of all the fundamental rights, we discuss the preamble, then the fundamental rights, and then the directive principles of a state policy. They all were talking about the rights and the responsibilities of the state, rights of the individuals or the citizens, and the responsibility of the state. And now we are going to discuss in the next lecture the fundamental duties that is enshrined in the Constitution of India. So we are going to conclude this lecture, and in the next lecture we are going to meet to discuss fundamental duties. Thank you very much.